All right, man. Well, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today. I've been looking forward to this for a while.
Yeah, no, I'm glad to do it.
The first thing I wanted to jump into was you released a video. I think it was about a month ago, where you talk about I can't remember the title of the video, but it was talking about the world's burning, but I don't care.
Right.
And that's something that I've been thinking about a lot recently, as just in the last 2 years, everything going on in the world. It seems like there's a lot of things to stress about externally.
Yeah.
And you have mainstream media, which is constantly trying to dumb you down and make you afraid. And then what I also notice is people that are in the the masculine development space, they have their own version of that. It's like this
Yeah.
this other this other side of they have their own version of the fear porn, I guess you could call it.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what is the balance between being aware of the external things at play, that the things we should be aware of, but also just focusing on the things you can control. What?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah. I think probably the easiest way I could kind of describe my thoughts on it is a bit of a story that kind of a thinking that I had run to. I remember I was I was on. I usually do one meal a day is my diet plan,
Hmm.
and I was in Barcelona and I was running. I was going for a run, and I remember I saw this like Burger King ad, right? It's this Whopper with an egg on it. I'm like, damn, I love eggs on burgers, right? And I was staring at it while I'm running, right? And I had this thought to my head. I was like, why are you looking at this thing? Like, why are you paying attention to something that you're not like? Are you going to go in there and buy a burger? If you're not, and I know I'm not, then why waste your attention, right? Don't even entertain a thought. Don't look at something that you're not going to take action on, right? And I thought about how this applies so much to to women as well, right? It's like don't even look at that girl. If you're not going to go talk to that girl, don't look at that girl, right? It's like
Hmm.
if you're in a relationship and you're not going to cheat on your partner, then don't look at that girl, right? It's like it comes down to this idea of like if you're not going to take action on the thing, having the information or wasting your time and energy and emotional energy with something is just a waste completely, right? And it will derail you. And when you think about all the things that are going on, right? You look at the fear porn from the media, and I disagree with it. It's a bunch of bullshit that they're feeding us, right? But when you think about this and you think about really how do these things, like how does having this information or not really affect your day-to-day life? For the most part, 90% of it doesn't. Now there's probably a 10%, especially with things that have been going on, where it does, where you have to make some decisions, to make some choices, right? Are you
Hmm.
going to, get the whatever, get the prick or whatever, like are you going to do those things, and is it going to affect your life as to where you can go, and those type of things? Sure, that makes a difference in your life, but you don't have any control over it. So it's worth knowing that information, but it's not worth ruminating on it. It's not worth getting upset about it. It's not worth trying to fight it when you know you can't fight it. One of the ways I think about it is it's like also, we are not free. We are slaves, right? You are not a free man. I'm not a free man. As much as we live in a quote free country and we think we have freedom, we are basically like a prisoner in a prison cell, right? The government, the powers that be, they tell us what we are allowed to and not allowed to do, and we don't have a choice in that, and we don't have
Hmm.
an influence in that, right? And so it's not a pessimistic viewpoint, but it's a realistic to understand. If you were in a prison, right, and you wanted to do something, you wanted to get out of that prison, you wanted to go somewhere, or have a nice lunch, it's not an option. Like you're not going to go and fight the prison guard, right? You're not going to go and try and escape unless you are, what I'm saying. But my point is that you would do what you're told to do because you have to. But when you understand that, that's when you have true freedom, because then you realize that you can operate within certain bounds, right? And we all have certain bounds. We're never going to be truly free. And so that is what sets you free, is having that degree of freedom that you realize, and not this false sense of freedom. And so any kind of effort, any kind of energy, any kind of attention to something that you have no control over is wasted. It should just be accepted. You know, the Stoics talked about this, about the idea of a cart, right? And you have a dog that's tied to the cart, and the cart is moving. And you can either be dragged by the cart, you know, or you can willingly go knowing that you're going to get dragged if you don't, right? And when you are dragged by the cart, you don't feel free. You feel like you're being dragged. But when you go with the cart, knowing that you're chained to that cart, you then gain yourself freedom within that. And so that's what it really all comes down to. And you look at with the whole manosphere and the whole thing, you know, and again, I get it about the concerns about Instagram and OnlyFans and how women are today and how Western society, I get it. I don't disagree with most of those things. But then the question is, what are you actually going to do about it? Like, are you going to sit here and complain and whine about it? And is it going to change anything? Is it going to change how women operate? Is it going to change the government? Is going to change all those things? It's not going to change it. So instead, figure out what your bounds are, figure out what is the prison that you are in, because we are all in a prison, and then figure out how much freedom do you have in that prison, and then what can you do with that freedom. That's what it really comes down to. And so all of the news and all this stuff that we consume, you know, sure, some of it maybe will influence decisions you make in your life, but if you really are honest about it, 90% of it, 95% of it has no bearing on your life. You're just going to do whatever you're going to operate your life just as normal. And some of these things will affect things, but if you can't control them, then it doesn't really matter.
There's also the masculine urge to fix things too. When you're talking about being pulled by the cart, there's a part of me that wants to pull back, you know,
Right.
So that's also another thing. Just while you were talking about that, I was thinking, you know, as men, we want to fix the world. Right. So sometimes when we see these things, rather than just accept, you know, this is beyond my scope. This is something that I'm not going to be able to change, but there's still like a part of you that wants to, you know, do the right thing, be a hero, save the West. But that can, yeah, there's a balance there. And I'm curious what you do in your personal life to manage your consumption of media online. Like, how do you filter out the content that doesn't serve you?
Yeah, I mean, I don't even watch the news. I don't go to news sites. You know, I hear about things from other people for the most part, unless I need to research something for a video or some topic like that. And I pretty much avoid social media. I don't scroll through a Facebook feed. I try not to scroll through Instagram feeds either. Like, I don't want any of this stuff. I want to be focused on my goals and my plan and what the things that I can actually affect and control. So that's really my big strategy on it. And then, you know, like I said, if I do see things and I might have an opinion on a thing, but I don't let it upset me. I don't try to fight the thing or convince people of things. You know, the difference, I think I could say perhaps with someone like me and you, is that we can influence the people that listen to us. And so in a sense, we have a duty. And that's where you're talking about, there's that kind of line between fighting back and not. And so that's a good example, right? It's like, okay, you know, I can make a video and I can enlighten some guys to help them about the situation and what courses of action they should take. And that is action. That does make an effect, right? It's the same thing, like, you know, at the bigger scale, like if you're going to save the West, okay, I'm not opposed to you saving the West, but like, how are you actually going to do it? Right. It's not going to be by you arguing with someone on Facebook. It's not going to be by you like posting something on Instagram saying, you know, this is wrong, or it's going to be by actually assembling an army, if you're going to go to that level, or amassing a huge following where you're going to actually have true impact that could actually, and 98% of guys that are listening are not in that position, and they're not going to put themselves in a position. They have no desire to do that. So then for them, it is a complete waste. For guys like me and you, there's a little bit more of a, you know, of some stuff that it makes sense for us to inform guys and to help them, and that makes sense. But for 98% of guys, it doesn't matter. So don't even concern yourself with it at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's something else I was going to say there. I was having a conversation with someone on the podcast last week. The episode's not released yet, but we were talking, he actually posed the question to his audience, what is a genuine way, not just some fluffy, like a genuine concrete plan to save the West.
Right.
And if you can tell me that, I will be like, wow, that's amazing. We should do that.
Exactly.
He pretty much said, no one has come to me with an idea that actually makes sense.
Right.
He was talking about, people are voting, the way that people vote, and like how there's too many people in the population think a certain way, and you're not going to be able to change everyone's mind necessarily. But then what I said to him was, and he agreed with me on this, is the only thing you can really do is just create, fix, Jordan Peterson talks about this, like make sure your house is in perfect order before criticizing the world. And, if you increase or if you maximize your individual sovereignty, and you get your health in order, you get your relationships in order, you get your house in order. If everybody did that, that would make quite an impact, right? That might save the West.
Right.
But it's just, you kind of, you have your individual, I guess, little pocket of the world that you create order in, and then it just branches out from there. So focusing on your individual goals and making your life better in turn could save the West potentially.
Yeah. And it's because it's the bottom up approach instead of the top down, right? Mm-hmm. All the ranting and raving I hear is about a top down approach. They want drastic changes. They want, their outrage. And it's the bottom up approach is what you just described. It's like, it's the same thing if you're trying to change. I don't know if you've ever had like a relative or a friend that they need help, right? And it's like, they don't want to hear anything. You can't help. You're trying to save them. You know what's better. You know what they need to do with their life, but they won't listen. Mm-hmm. And it's like, you can waste your breath and you can waste your energy trying to change. But you know what's the most effective way to change someone? It's to like set an example, right? It's to get your life in order, to not worry about them, to let them do whatever they're going to do. And for them to come to you and be like, man, I want to be like you. Like, that's how you have the influence. It's like, they see your life good. They see the things that you're accomplishing, you growing as a man and developing yourself. And then they start to say, I want some of that. And then they go on that path or that journey themselves, and that impacts, and you can create that cascading chain effect. But it starts with only focusing on you. If you get your own house in order, like you said, then you have a real chance to impact other people, and that could spread. But you can't do it from the top down unless you have power. Maybe someone like Elon Musk or Jeff Bezos could do it from the top down, realistically, right? So, but you and I, we can't do that.
Mm-hmm. And people don't necessarily want to be lectured to. They'd rather be inspired, right? They'd rather chase an ideal or see an ideal, and that's going to help them improve, rather than you saying, hey man, you need to do this and do that. People are defensive, and their ego gets in the way of that most of the time. So this whole conversation on, the world is burning, I even relate that to some of the stuff I see in the red pill community and the manosphere, whatever you want to call it. I just kind of call it the masculine development space. There's a bit of a branding issue there. I'm not sure. Like there's a lot of disagreement in the space as well. So, but I was just going to get into the what your thoughts are. I was having a discussion with someone a few weeks ago now, and I was saying, like, I see a lot of people overdosing on the red pill. Like I see the red pill becoming a cult of negativity and resentment towards women. And I'll be real. Like I got a lot of value out of, I've read all the books. I've listened to a ton of people in the space, and I've gotten a ton of value out of it. But I noticed that there's a point where you get all the value, but then you just keep going. And all of a sudden you're like, you know what, man, this is starting to make me paranoid and resentful. And like there's a creeping nihilism that happens as you're over consuming that content. Well, for me anyway, I'm just speaking from personal experience. And I'm curious if you have seen that, as someone who works with a lot of men, coaches men and stuff like that. Have you noticed that this kind of content is harming a lot of people?
Absolutely. That's why Like I did a video saying I'm leaving the manosphere. People are like, oh, you didn't really leave the manosphere. Well, I did because I'm not officially associating myself with that anymore because it is so harmful. This is my biggest concern with a lot of the content creators and the content out there is that it is not being helpful. And in fact, this is what I would say is you need to take the Stoicism pill first before you take the red pill, because otherwise you're going to interpret it the wrong way, right? You have to be of the mindset that I just want to know truth for truth's sake, not because I want to feel vindicated in some way or I want to be angry. You have to be willing to accept. You have to have almost this Buddhist non-attachment mindset to say, okay, this is the reality. I have no attachment to this reality. I don't feel one way or another. This is what it is. Just like if let's say you got in a car crash and then you woke up in the hospital and you had no legs. It's what it is now. No amount of fighting, no amount of anger, no amount of this isn't fair or this person hit me. It doesn't change. This is the life that you have to live and you have to adapt to that life. And that's where we're at. And for me, like understanding the red pill content and the red pill type of ideology, I remember when I first read Rational Male and that, I had already gotten some of these points, but that really was an eye opener. I wasn't upset at all when I read that book. I was like, damn, I finally have a playbook. I finally understand. I have a strat. Like I was playing this game. Okay. I didn't know what the game was. I didn't know what the rules were. Mm-hmm. And now I know at least what the rules are. Now, do I like the rules? Maybe not. Maybe I don't like the rules. Maybe I don't like where I am on the board. But now I can operate with knowledge, and I can use that to my advantage to exploit the way that things are. Right. Just like in playing any game, I do a lot of poker, and sometimes you're in situations where it's not good. But like if you understand where you're at and what's going on, you can exploit that situation to your advantage. I think in that video I had mentioned this really good book by Harry Brown called How I Found Freedom in an Unfree World. And, it's a really good book. I really recommend it. His philosophy on this comes from a very libertarian perspective. It's basically what I'm espousing here is this, like, figure out how to exploit the things that, like, don't try to not, like, get upset because taxes is theft. Sure, taxes is theft. Okay. But how can you now use that knowledge to your advantage to figure out the way to maximize your life in that? Again, coming back to like operating within your prison cell and finding your own sovereignty within that. So, but in the, the red pill space, there's so many guys that are now hating women. They have these negative viewpoints. They don't like you should take this red pill. You should take this understanding and you should use it to your advantage to understand. You now understand the nature of women and what could happen. And then the very next thing that you need to do after that is acceptance. Because without acceptance, then you're going to be playing a game according to the rules that you want, even though you know what the real rules are. And you're going to lose that game every single time. So acceptance is so important. And acceptance means to not be emotional about it. To just say, okay, this is how it is. Now, what will I do in this situation? And there's so much of this pessimistic viewpoint, right? All women are not like X. That's not a true statement. There, you can say these are the characteristics. This is the percentage behaviors of women, things that could happen. But if you're a masculine man, if you understand things, if you have boundaries and you don't tolerate disrespect, if you don't allow people to treat you in a way that you don't want to be treated. In fact, forget all the red pill. Just learn this one thing, guys, which is don't allow someone to treat you in a way that you don't want to be treated. If you just apply that one principle to your life, you can forget about all the red pill and everything else, and you will not get burned. Because that's how every single time that a guy gets burned or these things happen, it's always because he's allowed someone to treat him in a way that he didn't want to be treated. And if you can just apply that to your life will be so much simpler and so much better. And that's what you can control.
So listening to you speak on that, I think of it as, do you think the information is isn't necessarily the thing that, like, the information in the red pill. Say, let's take the rational male. Like,
Okay.
everything in that book, I listened to that, or I listened to the audiobook, and the information itself is really good. But do you think it's just the application, or like how people are using that information? Like, where do you think the toxicity actually comes from? Is it the information itself, or is it just people like emotionally reacting to it?
Yeah, I think it's somewhat of a combination of the two. At first, I thought it was just people emotionally reacting to it, but I've seen some counter examples as well, right? So I think a large portion of it is the emotional reaction to this, right? It's like, you know, if women are going to let's say, you know, that I'm trying to think of one of the kind of the principles that really upsets guys is that let's say that hypergamous, right? Hypergamy, that is a concept that really upsets guys. So they have this emotional reaction to this, thinking this is bad, this is wrong, women shouldn't be like this. Well, you know, I don't think that maybe a lion shouldn't like tear the guts out of a zebra and, you know, and eat it while it's, you know, screaming in pain. But that's nature. That is what it is. And so you have to be the lion, right? So it's like this emotional reaction to this thing is what sends guys in this negative spiral and towards hating towards women. But if you realize that, just like you know, if you had a lion in a cage and you stuck your arm into that cage, you're probably going to lose that arm. It's the same thing that women are hypergamous. It's the exact same thing. It's nature. And so the answer to this is to look at that and say, okay, based on that, what does that tell me about this world? It tells me that I need to be the best man that I possibly can be. And I need to constantly improve myself because I am always competing with other men. There is no point in which you will have absolute security if you're not the best man that she can have. And it doesn't just mean the best, most attractive man, or it doesn't mean the man who has the most money. It also means, and this is where the red pill is missing information, it also means being a kind and gentle and caring man who takes care of a woman but has his boundaries. If you treat her better than any other man has ever treated her, but you have your boundaries, you do not allow her to treat you poorly in response, you're going to build you're going to become a better man in her eyes than many men, than celebrities, than guys with more money, more attractive, all these things. And this is the harder pill to swallow because guys don't want, because it's easier to just take the red pill and say, okay, no, this is just how it is. It's harder to take to say what I guess what people would call the purple pill. I hate the terminology, but
I hate that so much because that purple pill thing makes me mad, because it's like if someone doesn't agree with you 100%,
right.
they get put in a different category. It's like, no, that's not the way it works.
But that's actually the harder pill to swallow, because that, and the reason why that pill is harder to swallow is because it requires you to take some personal accountability and responsibility for what happens to you, right? You know, you look at like the MGTOW communities, a lot of the red pill communities, and guys are like, oh, divorce, rape, and all this kind of stuff, and it's like, you know, I coach a lot of guys, and when it comes down to it, when there's a situation where a woman leaves a guy and divorces him or cheats on him and stuff like that, 95% of the time it comes down to a failing of the man. And guys don't like to hear that, but it's true, because guys aren't being taught how to be men in relationships, which is way harder than just pick up in game. You know, you have to be the guy that actually has the balance between having boundaries, not allowing yourself to be disrespected and treated poorly, and being the guy that is open and kind and compassionate, caring, and treats a woman like a princess, and gives her those things in life. And that will, if you can do that, I'm not saying that there's no chance that she's going to screw you over, right? But part of that, you have to blame yourself for selection, because you chose that person and you trusted that person and you didn't vet that person carefully enough. But it's very unlikely that you're going to suffer those effects, but that comes from that understanding. So yeah, that's where it comes to. And that's where, like I said, I think that some of the problem is that you read something like The Rational Male, and it's a great book. You know, Rollo's got a lot of wisdom.
Yeah.
But some of it is not coming. So much of it is theory, right? I've been in all of the, and I speak from experience saying that, like, I have done pickup, and I've been very successful at that. It works. There is game. It certainly works. It certainly makes a huge difference. And I've coached guys on that. I've been in the relationships. I've been in marriage relationships. I've been in long-term, short-term, and I have seen the ways that I have failed. I've seen the ways that I've succeeded, and so I don't speak from theory. I speak from actual practical experience in all of these areas, and it doesn't always coincide with some of the truths in the red pill. It's missing some other information that, and the key part of it is, like I said, I keep going back to Stoic philosophy, but also just general personal development of yourself, right? Spiritual development of yourself as a man, right? I maintain that a man's greatest gift to this world is love. I know that's a lot of times I say that seems like a weak stance, like a beta blue pills,
Yeah,
but
that's bullshit.
But it's the truth, right? It's the truth, because that is really the greatest gift that you have, right? And to be able to understand the world, to be able to understand nature, like I said, the lion that that is raw carnal nature, and to still be open and caring and loving and treat people with respect, whether they deserve it or not. To be able to stand behind your principles as a man, that is the thing that gives you the most power and peace and satisfaction, the tranquility that the Stoics have been after.
And you use the example of the lion to show like the dark side of nature, but you don't even have to use a lion. You can use yourself. Like that's one thing when I was, people are complaining about hypergamy. I don't get why men get so caught up on that, because it's no different than when I look at my innate sexual strategy. If we're just looking at the animal, my innate sexual strategy is spread my seed far and wide. Oh, that must mean that I could never commit to one woman, right? Because I'm just an animal. But there's I think what the red pill does, and I actually I had a conversation with Dr. Sean T. Smith about this, and he said, I think where the red pill may go wrong is it fails to see that there are forces at play that go against like our animal urges.
Yeah.
Right. Like I'm in a committed relationship. But obviously there's always going to be that temptation. There's always there's attractive women all around me, but that doesn't mean I'm going to act on my animal urges all the time. Right.
Right.
And it's the same thing. Like if a woman's hypergamous, yes, you should be doing your best to remain her best option.
Exactly.
And you also brought up something interesting there. It's like the red pill always sees it as, you need to be as jacked as possible. You need to be as hot as possible, make the most money. But there's also, an emotional, spiritual side to that isn't really addressed.
Yeah. And that's the thing is like, we've somehow lost the art of seduction, like of romance and seduction. Like in all the game and the pickup and all the red pill stuff, somehow we've lost that element of it, which is so critical because men and women operate differently. Like the values and the things that are attractive to men and women are so different. And one of the things that historically, you read about the romancers, the seducers, has been this seduction, this ability. And heck, you don't even have to take my word for it. Just go read some Nora Roberts novels that women are, I mean, that's the consumer of those novels. Yeah. You can also say 50 Shades of Grey. Yeah. And there's that element to it, but look at every single Nora Roberts. A lot of guys should read romance novels to get some education on this of what women really, this is not a graphic. There's no pictures, right? It's a book. Okay. Women fall madly in love with the hero of the story. Why? Because it's the same exact story every single time. He's usually some hotshot, billionaire or whatever, or some, cowboy or, one of the archetypes. So that's true.
Vampire.
Yeah, vampire, whatever it is. But, she doesn't like him at first, right? Because he's too arrogant or whatever. And whatever. It's this kind of plainish, she's slightly attractive, unassuming. She's not this bombshell girl. Okay. But then, like she starts to realize that like he's got his inner pain or whatever his thing is, and she can heal him in some way. And then at some point in the book, he figures out that she is the one woman in this world, and he makes her feel like the one woman, that there's no other woman in this world. And that's what makes her fall madly in love with him. You see what I'm saying? And so it's like, guys forget about this element of it, which is it's not just the looks, money, and game. Okay.
Mhm.
I mean, you could maybe characterize seduction into game, but it's this capacity to give women what they truly want. They want to be desired. They want to feel like they're the only woman in the world. And if a guy is able to provide that, but still maintain his dignity and self-respect, that's where guys go wrong. Because guys are like, oh, that sounds really blue pill. It does sound really blue pill at a surface level, because a lot of guys that are, quote, blue pill, is they will go and they will shower women with gifts and their undying love, with for no reason. She hasn't earned it, right? And
Mhm.
and they'll allow all kinds of mistreatment from her, and that's not going to be effective. But if you can be a guy that has already worked on himself, that's developed himself, that has respect for himself, that has discipline, that is dominant, that doesn't allow people to treat him that way, doesn't want to be treated, but then you can make a woman feel like she's the only one in the world, that's going to defeat a lot of that is going to make you her top choice by a very large margin, regardless of looks and status and these other attributes. And you see this play out. You do see this in the real world, but the red pill tends to focus on the other guys getting screwed. It doesn't. I don't know a guy that has personally developed himself, that has respect for himself, that has self-discipline, that does not tolerate disrespect and doesn't allow people to treat him the way he doesn't want to be treated, and is open and loving and kind, who has been burned. I don't know one. I don't know any of those stories, because I don't think
Mhm.
they exist. I'm sure that there's some story that exists, but I have never in my life heard it. And I challenge any guy that disagrees with me to come forward, show me, let me see how you have done the work, okay, and that you do have respect for yourself and you do not allow people to treat you disrespectfully, and you're open and loving and a kind person, gentle person, and you've been burned.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. And yeah, it's way more nuanced than people make it out to be. And one thing I'm a little bit concerned about is like, the real young, like it seems like these concepts are becoming more and more popular. Like the term simp is very
Mhm.
popular with especially with the younger kids now, like younger men, like, 16, 18, like early 20s. And it's funny because you're saying things like I've already like had these conversations with people. Like I can think about this in a nuanced way, but there are these people that like, oh, like there's, this is obviously a joke, but people will say things like, oh, you actually respect women, you're a simp. It's like this, it's getting so ridiculous to the point where it's like, it's not just like, it's not that binary, right?
Yeah,
Like you said, if you're the kind of guy who has strong boundaries, yet you still are a loving person, like that doesn't make you a simp. That's literally like, we're like a person who's a simp, a man who is a simp is the one that's getting walked over.
exactly.
Yeah, it's way more nuanced than the red pill wants to make it out. So
Yeah.
I appreciate your perspective on that. One thing I wanted to get into here was, you had a pretty insane, you have a pretty insane transformation story. You were overweight. I think you said you were like 300 pounds when you were 28, and you were broke at the time,
Yeah.
um, compared to where you're at now, for sure. And you really turned it around and made a significant dent in the universe. And I feel like today, many younger guys, myself included, there's this like obsession about being successful at a certain age. So like there would, like I need to have this level of success by 25, because we have all these people, on Instagram and social media, people at 20, I'm a multimillionaire and this and that. And for me, like this has been, I guess, it's something that can keep you on track, but it may lead to self-sabotaging thoughts, if you don't reach these milestones. And I just wanted to ask you, like, is this something you struggled with, like when you were going through this transformation, feeling like you had to make up for lost time? Because, a lot of people when they're 28 and you're overweight, and, you might look at someone who's 19 and shredded, and that could be something that kind of leads to self-doubt and sabotage. So I'm just curious, like, did you go through stuff like that?
I would say I didn't really struggle with that. I maybe because I was already past I was already older at that point. And I mean, what really hit me, what really caused me to go down this path of transformation, was what I call this theory that everybody thinks they're going to be a rock star someday. And what I mean by that is that everyone thinks that someday they're somehow magically going to make it. Like they're going to be famous. They're going to have a lot of money. They're going to have a lot of girls. Even when they don't truly believe it, they still feel like some deep part of them that they are entitled to and they deserve it. And somehow it's just going to happen. Like, so maybe they're going to get another life and it's going to happen. It's like, and I realized, no, this is your life. This is it. This is not the dress rehearsal. This is the show. All right. And the show has already been going, and this is the path you're going on the show. And it's not going to happen for you. You're not going to get like suddenly lose the weight. You're not going to suddenly become attractive. You're not going to suddenly get the girls. You're not going to suddenly make the money. Those things are not going to happen unless you take the action and make it happen. And so that really became my focus. And, you know, as I achieved so many goals and milestones, and, you know, I had all these goals at one point in my life. I was like, oh, if I could just make $100,000 a year, if I could just become a millionaire, if I could just become a multi-millionaire, if I could just get this super hot girl, if I could get this girl or these girls or all these things. And what I found was that all of those things, when I achieved them, they never made me happy. Right. It never was, because what I really found, in fact, when I retired at 33, like, you know, officially, you know, had been financially independent, I thought that was going to be the greatest thing in my life. I went to Maui. I spent 2 months there. I was going to live on the beach and drink Mai Tais. And I was the most depressed I'd ever been in my life. And it was because I had this goal. I had made this goal, and it was supposed to be the end all be all and be everything. I finally made it. And I realized that now I didn't have anything to shoot for. I didn't have any purpose in my life. It didn't suddenly transform me internally. I had made these external changes, but it didn't make the internal change. And so what I realized was that these goals, these things, like, you know, you talk about, I need to be a millionaire by this time, or all these things, those mean nothing. You're never going to be as rich as Elon Musk. So compared to him, you're going to be piddly, like it doesn't even matter, or Jeff Bezos, so if you're going to compare it to anyone, compare it to the top dogs. Okay. And then see how insignificant you are. You know, you're never going to be as famous as, you know, The Rock, or, you know, Henry Cavill, or, you know, whatever, whoever you want to pick, whatever. And, you know, so compare yourself to the big dogs, and then realize that, you know, what it is, it's not the goals, it's who you become in the process of achieving those goals. Like the goals are a thing, it's a flag that you're planting in order to move you in a direction of growth and personal development. And what really brings you satisfaction in life, what really brings you fulfillment, which is what we should be after, not happiness, but fulfillment, is growth. And so as long as you're on a path to growth, as long as you're growing in some way, as long as you're better than you were yesterday, as long as you could look back a year from a year ago and say, man, I have made improvements. I am on the right path. I have improved myself. That is what you need to focus on. And that is what is really going to actually give you that fulfillment in life. And, you know, that comes down to what I call, you know, trusting the process, right? Because you cannot control results. Right? There is nothing you can do that is going to guarantee you're going to become a millionaire. Okay. But what you can do is you can do the best. You can take a process and follow that process and do your best action. And again, a lot of the psychology comes from things like poker, where, you know, poker is a game of luck and skill. There's a really good book called Thinking in Bets by Annie Duke. She was a professional poker player. And she wrote a really good book that is a really guide for life, that I think you learn a lot of lessons from the poker table. And one of the most important lessons is that you cannot control what the cards are going to come. You're not going to control if you can win. And there's going to be a lot of situations where you're going to make all the right actions, but you're still going to lose. There's also going to be situations where you make wrong actions and you're going to win. So it's not about winning or losing. It's about making correct actions. And that's what your life needs to be about. So if you're young right now and you're comparing yourself to other people and you're worried you're not going to get to where you need to be, don't worry about that. Only worry about what you can focus on. Like the Stoic archer, you know, the Stoic archer, he draws his bow and he aims and he's put in practice. And when he lets go of that arrow, the wind could take it. It's not his responsibility anymore. His only job is to aim as carefully as possible and to pull back that bowstring and then let it fly. And it will fly where it will fly. And if you have done the right actions, you have a higher probability that it will hit the target. But there's no guarantee. And you're not entitled to the result, right? The Bhagavad Gita has a really good passage in there where he says that, or they talk about this idea that you're entitled to the work, to your labor, but not the fruits of your labor, right? And this is so important of a concept to understand, is you're here to do the work. There's no guarantee of the results. The results don't belong to you. The results come or they don't come, just like the cards in poker fall or they don't fall. But your responsibility and the thing that you should derive satisfaction and a job well done and fulfillment and feel like you're a success is if you did the work. The results, there's so much luck in fortune and fame and making money and business and all those. There is so much luck, just like there is in the card room. But what makes you a winning player in life is making the right actions.
Like being present in the pursuit of something that you find meaningful. That's where you find fulfillment. You know, you're talking about retiring, you retiring young, which is, you know, the millennial dream right now. You know, retire at 30. Like, how many YouTube videos do you see? Like, how I retired at 30. You know, but I thought about that. It's like, well, if I'm chasing something, like even just this podcast or like having these conversations, it's like, if I enjoy doing this and this is something that I find a lot of meaning in, why would I want to retire? Right? Like, I feel like retirement is like you're decaying at that point. And obviously, like, you can retire and then do something else. That's like, but you know, there always needs to be something that you find meaning in your life. It can't just be like, well, I'm just gonna chase instant gratification and pleasure because now I've done all the work. It's like, well, I don't see that being a very good long-term strategy. So I like your take on that.
Yeah, when I talk about retirement, I talk about being financially independent.
Yes.
I think that is a very important thing because it does give you freedom when you have that. But you're not going to quit. You're not going to just like live a life of leisure. That's not, I tried it. Believe me, it will make you as depressed as hell. You might as well be dead, because if you're, you know, Tony Robbins always says, if you're not growing, you're dying. And it's true. And you know that's the truth of it. So that's what it's about. It's not about, you know, about the fine. It's not about just like making enough money so you don't have to do anything. And that's what I thought it was. I thought I was going to play video games and just do whatever I want. I haven't done that yet. You know, I tried to do it for 2 months. I couldn't do it because I need to be moving forward and achieving goals and improving myself and continuing to take on new challenges in life. So, but financial independence, I think that is a worthy goal to strive for, because it does give you a lot of freedom and opportunity in life, and knowing that you don't have to work. There's some amount of just freedom in that I do encourage people to pursue, and I do think it is a worthwhile achievement. I call it unmortgaging your life, right? It's sort of, when you're born, you have a mortgage on your life. You have to pay the upkeep cost, right? Every month to live, you must make payments, and in order to make those payments, you must be a slave. You must work because you need food, you need shelter, you need these things. But if you can get to a point where you can pay off that mortgage on your life, where that is paid for you, now you can live freely and do what you want, which is not going to be nothing, but it gives you that freedom, because it is sort of like buying your amnesty or your freedom from slavery that you're born into, to a degree, right?
What's your definition of financial independence exactly? Because there's two ways I think about it. The first way is financial independence being, you know, like I don't need to make another dollar in my life and I'll be fine. Or is it, hey, I have my own source of income. I don't have to have an employer. You know, I'm independent of a external system. I mean, obviously, like government, you're still going to be dependent on that in some way, shape, or form. But you know, like a business owner is he financially independent? You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, a business owner would not be financially independent unless he has enough income that he has true wealth, which is income that's coming in without him having to trade his time for it. That covers his expenses. So financial independence, in my definition, is that you have enough income that's coming in passively that it covers the expenses that you have to operate your life. Yeah.
Cool, man. I wanted to get into the you losing weight real quick here, because most people, I was a personal trainer for quite a while, and I'm really involved in, you know, fitness and nutrition and all that stuff. And I'm just curious, like, most people do not lose the weight, and most people do not consistently, like, they don't actually make that change. You know, they'll lose like 30, 50, even like 80 pounds and then gain it all back. Like, it's very rare that someone makes that crazy of a physical change and keeps it. What I'm curious, like, up until the point where you were 28, overweight, did you ever care about your health? Was it ever something you thought about? Did you ever try to make a change before that? And when you decided to make a change, was it just like cold turkey? I'm going to eat right. I'm going to train consistently. I'm just curious what that looked like.
Yeah, so I did. I mean, when I was in high school, I actually got in really good shape. I started running, started going to the gym. I was a dork, and I made a little bit of a transformation there, mostly an external change, but it didn't stick because I didn't have an internal change, right? I was doing things for external validation, which is you need intrinsic motivation to do things, not for external validation. And so I actually got in really good shape. You know, I was pretty jacked, pretty ripped, not like super ripped, but you know, definitely had a physique that was better than 90% of guys. And then it slipped away from me, right? My lifestyle was not good. I became the stereotypical fat programmer, you know, dorky guy. I reverted back because I didn't make the internal change. And so a lot, like the most powerful force in the universe is identity, right? You have to change your identity in order, like the problem with people going on crash diets and losing weight and all these things is they haven't internalized, they haven't changed their identity. They don't see themselves as a person who who is this healthy person, who is this masculine man, who is this, you know, stud, you know, beast of a man. But when you internalize that, then your actions, because your actions always flow from your identity. They flow from your nature, right? Just like we talked about the animal kingdom, like the reason why a lion hunts and kills is because it's in his nature, right? The reason why a snake bites is in his nature. And so you have to change your nature. You have to, that's the thing that we can do as human beings that animals can't do, is we can actually change our nature, and we can change those things about ourselves and change our identity. And, you know, real quick on the identity change comes from mainly two things to change your identity, because you can't just will yourself into it. It's your environment, right? So I always say, you know, a pickle is a pickle because of what it brines in, right? If you put a cucumber in pickle juice, it will become a pickle because it's what it brines in. So you are what you brine in. You will become what you brine in, right? So that's one thing, right? So if you change your environment around the people who have the identity that you want to have, around the kind of people who are positive, who are, you know, reading the books that are good, that are going to help you on that path, not watching the stupid YouTube videos that are derailing you, or television and crap like that is feeding you the wrong information. Okay. So and hanging around the right people, right? The environment. And then the second one is actions. If you take actions of the identity you would like to have, you will become that thing. You will become what you do, right? And so if you take those actions of that healthy person, of the person that you want to be, not trying to restrain yourself, but taking those actions that are specifically going to make you that, then you will become that identity. Your brain will, your subconscious will say, well, he's doing these things. So, you know, for example, I became an ultra runner. That's crazy. I mean, was this fat guy, you know, and then I was this big buff, you know, 230-pound guy. How am I going to run 50 miles? Well, because I just fucking did it. I just got up every morning, ran my crazy miles, ran marathons, and I'm not the fastest, you know, marathon runner or ultra, but it became my identity. I'm a long distance runner. It became part of my identity when I did those actions. So for me, like I said, the transformation, you know, I eventually made that identity change or started to make that identity change at that moment when I had the real lasting transformation. And, you know, I tried every single diet, and, you know, I did keto before it was keto. I did zero carb, and like none of those things, like some of them helped and none of them sticked until the identity changed. And, you know, from a pragmatic standpoint, like if I gave some practical advice, and believe me, I know all the stuff on the diets and the macros and nutrients and stuff like that. But you know what I give to all my coaching clients, and it works, and it's what I do. And it's so simple, and so many people hate it, but it's just so damn simple. And it's a lifestyle change that you can actually implement in your life, because I've been doing it for basically 7 years now, is 1 meal a day. That's it. You just fast until 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. You eat your 1 meal. And if you want to lose some weight, walk for 30 minutes to an hour a day. Listen to some audio books while you're doing it. If you can walk uphill, that's even better, because walking doesn't make you as hungry as running and other things that usually net balances out, because you get more hungry. And you want to wear a weighted vest or walk up a hill, that'll burn some extra calories. It's really almost the same amount as running. It's only a little bit less, but it's so much easier and so much more doable and so much more maintainable that you could make this your habit every day, listening to audiobooks and growing yourself. And then if you want to make some kind of like dietary tweak, obviously when you're eating one meal a day, don't eat anything you want, but you can eat, you just focus on making sure that whatever meal you eat is high protein. And then there's for a variety of reasons, but one of the biggest ones is because it will steer you away from the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And try to have it high fiber as well. If you just think about high protein, high fiber, and that's it's so simple because you can maintain that forever. You'll feel good about yourself and you'll lose weight, and it will be so easy. I know it sounds crazy when I say it, and people are like, oh no, that's not what, the nutrition advice or whatever, but hey, it works. So, and is it the most optimal thing? No, it's not the most optimal thing, but like adherence is so important. And
Yeah.
simplicity.
And the thing to go, like, what I would add there is like, is it the most optimal for you? Right. Like,
Right.
So like people are, when it comes to nutrition science and training, people have it's very like tons of different camps saying all types of shit. But whatever works for you, right? Like if one meal a day helped you consistently lose weight, that's amazing. And one thing I'm curious about is you put out a video. I can't remember how long ago it was now, but it was you were talking about what you do now for training, and you were doing like full body 3 times a week. Are you doing that kind of training now?
Yeah, that's what I do is full body 3 times a week. And I found that to be the most effective because I've tried every kind of split in everything. And I found the most growth in that because I feel like frequency turns out to be the most important aspect. Because if you're tearing down and building up the muscle 3 times a week instead of once a week, even if you're not optimal, you're more likely to hit the optimal. I have a friend of mine who works out once a week, but he does this and only does one set per exercise.
He probably goes pretty hard.
Yeah, he goes really hard, and he has a crazy awesome physique. So, but he's probably optimizing that range of breakdown, and whereas for the average person, I think hitting 3 times a week full body, you're going to get pretty close to the optimal range, or you're going to get above the net positive in growth there. And the other thing about it too is it's like I think for me, I'm not really trying to grow bigger at this point. I think if I was, I would be doing a little bit more and being in the gym a little bit more, but I could probably even maintain my physique with 2 full body workouts per week. And for just 45 minutes or an hour, because once you have built it, it's so much easier to maintain it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Most people, I think when they're first getting into the gym, they go way too hard. They do 6 days a week. And it's like, no, you don't need to do that. 3 days a week, and if you're trying to maximize your genetic potential and gain as much muscle as possible, maybe 3 times a week is not the best bet, maybe 4 or 5 times a week. But I don't even think like advanced people need to be in the gym 6 days a week.
Yeah. I don't.
And one thing you talked about too was, the training intensity as well. A lot of people will go in and they'll do their 6 days a week, but their sets are like, 6 out of 10 effort wise. And I'm assuming for you, when you're going in the gym, those sets are, how many working sets do you do?
I just do 3 per exercise. Yeah.
And you probably go like, you're like touching failure probably.
Oh yeah, for sure. I'm going to failure, pretty much every time. So the only one that I'm not going to absolute failure is probably like some exercise like bench press or something like that, where it'd be very difficult to go to absolute failure if you don't have a spot. So
yeah, you probably hurt yourself.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're at 53 minutes, and I like to keep these things in an hour. So I just wanted to jump into. You had a video. You're talking about Dave Ramsey, and I tried to find the video again, but I couldn't find it. But so for me, I was talking about like milestones and getting caught up. And I'm bringing this up because like personally, I was actually a music producer that was like my dream, to be a music producer. It was funny that you said, we all think we're going to be rock stars, but literally I thought I was going to be like a famous music producer. And I went out to Toronto and was working with a bunch of people, and I was very foolish. Yeah. I was very naive, and I spent a lot of money, and I was at the end of it, I was out of love with music.
Yeah.
I was in like 15K worth of debt, and I was like 25. And to me, that just felt like, oh shit, man, like I'm in such a rough place. And I find Dave Ramsey, and I used his advice to like pay off all my debt, like bust my ass for 2 years, sold everything I didn't need, sold my car, bike to work, worked a shitty job at an event center. And, you know, his advice really helped me. And now I'm still kind of in that headspace where I'm, you know, I've got a decent chunk of money saved. And you said something in your video where you're saying that I'm not going to put words in your mouth, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you said something about like his advice is very basic. And I don't know if you used the word mediocre, but you said like some people might take his advice and not be willing to take risks or something like that. Like, or maybe if you could just go into like that mindset around fitness and how that can maybe limit you.
Yeah. So what it comes down to is it's like the way I view Dave Ramsey, I think his advice is great. I think it does help a lot of people, but it is like for mediocre people, right? In the sense that like, it's not optimal advice, right? So, you know, I can give some instances of things like, you know, he would probably emphasize paying off your credit card, the lowest payment one first, or the as opposed to the most optimal way is to sort them by interest rate and pay on the highest interest first, right? He would say cut up your credit card or put it in a block of ice, and I would say look for a 2% cash back credit card and use it for every one of your purchases, but pay it off every month. So the things that I'm telling guys that kind of go against what he says are based on me assuming and believing that you have the discipline and you really want to make this happen, not you need some training wheels to do it. Now, granted, majority of people will need the training wheels, right? But, you know, I'm talking to guys that I consider to be part of Bulldog mindset, and Bulldog mindset is no, we are serious about like improving ourselves and doing whatever it takes and having the discipline to do it. And so I'm not going to baby you and give you some suboptimal advice. I'm going to give you the hard, this is exactly what you need to do if you want to do that. And I've done that to some degree with fitness as well, right? It's like, if you want me to tell you the optimal thing that you want to like have a superior physique, if you want to do that, yeah, we can go down that path. It's not going to be just OMAD and walking 30 minutes a day. That's not what it's going to be. But, you know, again, I'll give some blanket advice for guys that because it's such a struggle that it's like, well, you know, let's lose the weight and then we can talk about that, because you know the chances of someone actually losing the weight and keeping it off is so slim. Yeah. Whereas I feel like on the financial side, it's a little bit more. It's like, you know, yeah, you can, if you understand these concepts and you start applying these things, it's not as difficult as eating, right? So there, I think there's some tie-ins there, and I could be convinced other way. You know what I mean? I think there's some valid arguments against what I'm saying as well. You know, but what it just comes down to is again, I have nothing against Dave Ramsey. He's a great guy. He's helped so many people. And you know, if you're going to take some financial advice, sure, take some from him, but just know that it's not the optimal. Like, it's not going to get you the best possible results. And if you have the discipline and you want the optimal results, then this is what you have to do. This is where to go. You know, like, I would never pay off my house. That's not a smart move. You know, it's like, because you have to look at interest rates and you have to say, well, if you're getting, you know, a 3% interest rate on your house, paying it off, any money you put into that only gets you a 3% return. If there's somewhere else where you could get a better return on your money than a 3% return, then you should put it there, because optimally in the long run, that is what's going to give you the better result. So it's like, I guess what it comes down to is like, for the financial advice with Dave Ramsey and whatnot, is it's like, if you follow Dave Ramsey's advice, will you get out of debt? Will you become financially successful? Will you do better than 90% of the people? Yes.
Yeah.
If you want to become a millionaire, not going to work. You're going to have to do something a lot better. It's the same thing. If you want to lose some weight, right? Let's equate it to fitness. Following my advice about doing OMAD and walking 30 minutes a day and eating high protein, will that work? Will you lose weight? Could you keep it off? Sure. If you want to get on stage as a competitor, if you do that, will you get on stage as a competitor? No. Yeah. Right. So where do you want to be? Like, if you just want to be average, out of debt and whatever, and, you know, live a mediocre life. And I don't mean to be derogatory in it, but a lot of people, just want to work a job. They just want to not be in debt. They just want to be able to save for college or whatever and have a good life. Sure. Dave Ramsey's advice, absolutely, 100%. If you want to be a millionaire, you have to realize that that's not going to do it, though.
Mm-hmm. So one thing that it comes to mind when I think about that too, like that, yeah, that all made sense to me. I guess this is kind of going into something else, but it's this idea of, okay, so say you're working a safe job. I'll take my personal example. So right now, like I'm debt free. I've got a decent chunk of savings. I'm in a good spot financially. And in Canada, things have gotten a little crazy with the poke in the arm. If you don't get the poke in the arm, you're pretty much on the street. And I was working as a personal trainer, but I was working for a gym, and then I lost my job. And me and my brother, we invested in a truck, and we started a moving and delivery company, and we would do that part time. So we work, 20 to 25 hours a week max. Obviously, it's not my passion, but we're solid at it, and we make good money. And I'm curious to know, like, there's certain things that we do in life where you just need to make the money, right? And this, this podcast, this is my passion. This is something I'm working hard at and trying to, like, eventually I want to monetize this brand and do this. But it's like, I still need to follow money, because there's a point in my life where, when I was chasing the music, I was broke as hell.
Yeah.
Right. So I almost have like PTSD when it comes to chasing that dream, chasing the passion.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, no. I'm going to chase the passion, but I got to get the fucking bag first. Does that make sense? Like, I'm in this position where it's like, and also as a millennial, like people there's this idea, well, like, it's just this fluffy idea of like, chase your passion, pursue what you're passionate about. And it's like, well, like, Jack Donovan, he, in his the very first book, The Way of Men, he has this thing that stuck with me in there. And he talks about, like, when there's barbarians at the gates, no one's allowed to be a philosopher or an artist, right? Everyone has, like, and I think about, like, being financially, like, in a shitty spot financially. You can't be an artist. You can't do the fun stuff, because you have barbarians at the gates, people trying to, the tax collectors, whatever. And I'm curious, like, what are your thoughts on, pursuing your passion, but also, like, balancing that with the money?
So, okay. So I've got a good answer for you. I've thought about this quite a bit. So first of all, a really good book by Cal Newport called So Good They Can't Ignore You. Read that book. It's all about don't follow your passion. Instead, do what they'll pay you for. And
sorry, what was that called again? So Good They Can't Ignore You?
Yeah. Cal Newport. And the premise of the book is don't follow your passion. Instead, like, bring passion to what you do. And then, because passion is something you bring, right, to what it could be, to whatever you do. And as you build expertise and go in depth into a thing, you will build a love for it from the work, from the grind, from from doing the hard stuff that you don't necessarily want to do. But here's the way that I look at it as far as optimizing life. Have you played any real-time strategy games like StarCraft or?
Not as much, no, but I get the basic concept.
Okay, so in one of those real-time strategy games, right, like Warcraft or StarCraft or Age of Empires, whatever it is, you have these resources that you gather, right? You mine or whatever it is, and then you build these armies and you construct your things, right? And there's always some, like, top tier unit, right? That is, it's the cost effectiveness of it is so much better, but it's so expensive, right? Whereas the cheapest units have a very low cost effectiveness, right? You overpay for them, right? And they're not as effective. Okay. If you play one of these games and you say, okay, all I'm going to do is just save up all the money from my mining, and then I'm just going to buy the biggest units because that's the most cost effective one and it's the most powerful. What's going to happen is other people are going to come into your base and kill you. Like, you're not going to survive, right? You have to build these inefficient units in order to survive, to be able to just defend yourself, in order to build up, to be able to finally buy the bigger units. Now it's cost effective and your work is multiplied and you're on passive income, right? Let's say, like, that's kind of the equation. So in life, it's the exact same thing. You have to put in some hours where you trade your time for money, and it's not very effective, right? Let's say take the moving truck thing, right? I mean, it's like you're trading directly your time for hours. You're not really investing anything. You're not really building. I mean, to some degree, you're building the business a little bit and whatnot. So there is some degree of that. But all I'm saying is that, like, let's take someone working a regular job, because that's a better example, because they don't have any ownership in the thing. You should do the minimal amount of that to survive, and spend as much time as you can afford on the long-term pay, the things where you invest your time and it will pay you for the future. Okay. The more of that you can do as possible, the better off you're going to be 5 years from now, and 10 years from now, and 20 years from now, because it's more efficient. Right. And so that's what it comes down to. So, yeah, so you're right. You got to survive right now. So do what you need to do to survive, but only what you need to do to survive. Don't be extravagant. Don't instead spend all the rest of your time in the things that will pay you back in the future. Things like this podcast, things like, growing a business, right? Those type of things. That's where, that's the way I look at it. And when you start out in life, it might be like 75-25, where 75% of the time you got to just do the shit to survive, especially if you're getting a minimum wage job, you're not, whatever.
Yeah.
So then spend that 25 improving your skills to get a better job. Right. So, and then maybe it becomes a 50-50. And now you still spend that 50% of your time improving your skills to get a better job. Right. Depending on, or you invest in business, and then you get to a point where it's 25-75. Now you're in a really good spot where you're just doing a little bit to survive, but you're spending a majority of your time doing something that's going to pay you back. It's the more efficient units you're buying now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Just to wrap that up, because we're just peaking over an hour here, and I don't want to take up too much of your time, but let's say like someone in my position, I have a company, right? I own the sale. So I'm working part-time, but I'm making way better money than if I was working for a business or whatever.
Yeah.
Which in itself is, there's some Douglas Kruger. I can't remember if that's actually his name, but he has a book called Poverty Proof. And he talks about, in that book, he talks about, owning the sale versus not owning the sale. That's a big difference. But also like right now, like I don't like confidently want to say like I own a business. More I would say I own my job.
Yeah.
So I was saying for someone like in my position, I could scale up, hire people and manage them. Right. That's where I'm at that spot right now where I want to manage people so that they're working and I have to put very little time in, but I'm making like really good money doing that. That's going to help me survive and pay my shit off while I'm pursuing like the passion project and trying to make that long-term goal make sense.
Fundamental difference between capitalists and socialists. What I call leverage, which is the key to success in life, in all areas of life, leverage, using other people's time, using other people's money, using other people's resources. They call exploitation. So
that's such bullshit.
But that's what it is. Leverage is the key. Leverage, the only way to become rich, the only way to do more than what you can grow in the land and hunt is leverage. That's it. Otherwise, you would just sustain what a normal human output could be. You must use leverage, and that's what you're just talking about right there. So
cool, man. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. That's a good place to wrap it up. If you can just let people know where they can find you, that'd be great.
Yeah, just go to bulldogmindset.com. When you go there, there'll be a little quiz that pops up. A 10-question quiz will tell you your Bulldog score, whether you have mental toughness, these kind of things, confidence, how many books you read, lots of really cool questions there. It will take you 5 minutes. And then you'll be on my email list where I will send you updates on my videos and about my information there. So just go to bulldogmindset.com, check out your score.
Awesome, man. I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with me today.
Yeah, good talking to you.
Have a good one.